Good evening, everyone. Thank you so very much for joining us in this very special edition of Black Nursing Excellence right here on blackdoctor.org. My name is Meedy Barnelli. I am the CEO, president, and founder of the Black Nurse Collaborative. And boy, let me tell you, this evening we have such an exciting panel discussion tonight. And I'm excited to welcome them. But before we do that, I want to let you know what we're talking about this evening. So, we are talking about why should you consider a career in nursing. I myself want to talk about this evening the strategies for building and sustaining the Black nursing workforce. I myself have been a nurse for nearly 20 years, and during this program of blackdoctor.org, we have partnered with the phenomenal Johnson & Johnson organization to do just a few things. One, we would like to spotlight this exciting, fulfilling, and having to have a purposeful, driven career in nursing. Secondly, we want to make sure that we urgently to let you know we need more nurses. And as you're going to hear from one of our amazing panelists, Dr. Katie Boston Leary, the math is not mathing, friends. And then lastly, we want to talk about how do we share insights and perspective of these nurses that will be joining us this evening and our special guest from Johnson & Johnson on what it's like to be a nurse today, post the pandemic. It is our hope that after this amazing broadcast, all of you all will like, share this information, and that our audience will be able to go to Johnson & Johnson's website, which is nursing.jnj.com, to learn more about how you and others can get involved in this very rewarding career of which I love so dearly. So without further ado, because we want to get into the topic tonight, we're going to call it Hot Topics. And we are excited that you're joining us. As I'm doing that, I'm going to introduce and bring up our panelists. The very first person I have the amazing honor is someone near and dear to my heart, the phenomenal Dr. Ina Williams. She began her nursing career in the amazing island of Jamaica before moving to the mainland of the United States. And she took on various nursing roles that increased her responsibilities, where she is now the very first Black Chief Nursing Officer at Yale New Haven Hospital. So we want to welcome Dr. Ina to the panel. Good evening, Dr. Williams. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you,
Next, we
Minnie.
have good evening. Next, we have another person so near and dear to my heart, a mentor of mine, the phenomenal Dr. Katie Boston Leary. She is the Director of Nursing Programs at ANA, which is the American Nurses Association. She's been a registered nurse for not 27 years. I'm going to just say 5 because she looks amazing, but for 27 years. And she specialized in certifying and she specialized and certified in perioperative nursing and nursing administration and leadership. So welcome to you, Dr. Katie. I'm glad to have you this evening.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Next, I am pleased to introduce the phenomenal, one of my new best friends that I just met because of this amazing opportunity, Dr. Okolio. He is a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. He is a professor at UK, which is a University of Kentucky, and he also directs the tobacco and treatment services and evidence-based practice at Eastern State Hospital. And if I messed any of those up, Dr. Okolio, I'm sure you will correct me when you come on. He also is the immediate past president of the American Psychiatric Nursing Association. Welcome to you, Dr. Okolio.
Thank you, and it's such a pleasure to be here.
I'm glad to have you. And we are also super excited. We're going to call him one of our nursing friends this evening, the phenomenal Mr. Howard Reed. And he is head of the global head and senior vice president of global health equity at Johnson & Johnson. And if I can add, I want to say that he loves nurses. So good evening to you, Mr. Reed.
Good evening.
Well, friends, so listen, Mr. Howard Reed, I want to go ahead and get started with you. We have so much that we can talk about in just a short period of time. Talk to me about your background, Mr. Reed, and how Johnson & Johnson supports the nursing profession. So the individuals like myself and our panelists tonight, and why are you sponsoring this amazing Facebook event with blackdoctor.org?
Yeah, thank you, Meedy. First of all, I'm super excited to be here. This is going to be an amazing conversation tonight. By way of background, I've been at J&J for about 16 years in industry, in the healthcare industry for a couple decades. I'm the son of a nurse. My mother is from Jamaica, was a community health nurse, became a nurse practitioner, ultimately ended up teaching nursing at the university level. So I have a deep passion for nursing. But I want to share a little bit of background about J&J. J&J has been a proud advocate for the support of the nursing profession for over 125 years through scholarships, leadership in clinical education, community outreach, advocacy, and so many more initiatives. And the reason is we know nursing is the very backbone of our healthcare system. There's a few facts I wanted to share with the audience tonight. Nursing is the largest healthcare provider and profession in the US. There's approximately 4 million nurses in the US, and they ultimately spend more time with patients than any other provider. Oftentimes, a nurse is the first provider a patient sees and the last provider a patient sees. And they work in many, many different settings: hospitals, schools, clinics, private offices, shelters, and so many more, connecting patients to care. The thing that we know at J&J is that nurses are vital to patient care and healthcare delivery in this country. And we can't underestimate the important role they play as leaders, as innovators, for patients, and as community advocates. The challenge that we see, and one of the reasons we're so excited for the conversation tonight, is twofold. Number one, we urgently need more nurses. The Bureau of Labor Statistics estimates that in the US, we'll need more than 200,000 new nurses by 2030. And we urgently need more nurses of color. Representation matters. Even today, statistics show that nurses of color are significantly underrepresented in nursing. Representation is so important, as research shows that when healthcare providers, including nurses, mirror the communities that they care for, access to care, trust, and patient outcomes ultimately end up improving. At J&J, our objective is to support an innovative, thriving, and diverse nursing workforce, empowered to advance health equity and ultimately transform healthcare. And lastly, Meety, our goal in sponsoring this event tonight with all of you is to inspire a new, diverse generation to pursue a career in nursing.
Wow, Mr. Reed, thank you for sharing that. Something that really stood out to me is what you were speaking about, how we have a direct impact onto the overall healthcare system. And so you mentioned in your introduction, Mr. Reed, that you're the son of a nurse. Talk to me very briefly, if you don't mind, about your personal connection into nursing with your mother being a nurse. She must be an amazing woman.
She is. She was a nurse for over 3 decades, recently retired and moved to Florida from upstate New York. And she started out, as I mentioned, as a community health nurse, going door to door in Rochester, New York, treating for her community. And I grew up hearing stories at the dinner table of my mom sharing how proud she was to care for her people. The respect that she had in her community based on the care that she was able to deliver, and the trust her patients ultimately had in her because she came from communities like theirs. So the passion for nursing, the importance of it, the intimacy that nurses have with their patients, is something that I grew up with, and it stayed with me throughout my entire career. It's one of the reasons I ended up in a career in healthcare. So nursing is vital to our healthcare system, but for me, it's also deeply personal.
Wow, thank you for sharing that, because my own personal connection to nursing is personal, Mr. Reed. And I'll share that briefly as we are bringing up our panelists. My mother passed away, Mr. Reed, when I was 4 years old of ovarian uterine cancer. And it was the nurse that provided exceptional care. And that was such an advocate for her with my father and my brother, who was just 4 years older than me. And she went above and beyond. So thank you for sharing that perspective. I really appreciate that. And best wishes to your mother and her preferment. How about that?
That's right. Thank you.
Awesome. So listen, friends, and all of you that are watching and our audience this evening, I am excited. You see these 3 amazing people: Dr. Williams, Dr. Boston Leary, Dr. Okoli. And I'm going to quickly start with Dr. Williams. If she can quickly say hello, give us a 20, 30-second background about who you are and what you're doing right now, Dr. Williams. We're going to go ahead and get started. Then we'll quickly go to Dr. Boston Leary and Dr. Okolio.
So as Meety says, good evening, everybody. I am the Chief Nursing Officer here at Yale Naval Hospital. I have been at this hospital for about 31 years this year, and really had a progressive career. As Meety mentioned, I started my career in Jamaica, where I received my basic nursing training. served there for about 12 years in a number of roles, charge nurse, a manager, director of an OR. Most of my background is in operating room nursing. I came to the United States. That's a long story, but here I am, and was fortunate to accept a position here as a staff nurse in the operating room, and really have had a wonderful progressive career over the last 30 years to become the chief nursing officer. So I've served as an educator, I've served as a manager, director, vice president, pretty much just about every role that you can think of in nursing. And so I'm really grateful to be here, and I'm excited about the next couple of minutes that we'll have together.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Dr. Boston Leary?
Yes, hi. Good evening, everyone. Very happy to be here. My name is Katie Boston Leary. I am the Director of Nursing Programs at the American Nurses Association. I oversee nursing practice and work environment issues related to nursing. And I also oversee Healthy Nurse, Healthy Nation, which is a free program that focuses on nurses' overall health and well-being. We address issues related to staffing, racism in nursing, collaborate on issues related to the pipeline, workplace violence. We're going to be taking on gun safety, climate change, and so on, and scopes of and standards of practice. So prior to that, I worked as a chief nursing officer at a couple of institutions, and so I've moved from the practice to the policy side. And I'm really excited to be here to talk about what we need to do to diversify the profession, because we have a lot of work to do. We haven't moved the dial fast enough, so I'm really, really excited about what we're going to be talking about tonight.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Boston Leary. I can't wait to have that conversation. And Dr. Akolio, good evening. Welcome. We're so excited to have you. Tell us a little bit about you, sir.
Thank you. I was a little inspired by, well, each one of you, and also Mr. Reed. You know, my mother's a nurse. My sister's a nurse. I'm a nurse. So I come from a family of nurses. I was born in Nigeria. And when I was about 4, moved to Canada, moved back to Nigeria for a while, moved to the Middle East where I completed my high school, and then eventually moved to the United States to pursue my nursing career. And so currently I am now a professor at the University of Kentucky College of Nursing, where I teach in the PhD nursing program. I'm also a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner, and I have a practice where I see patients. And I also, in my spare time, work at a psychiatric, state psychiatric facility, Eastern State Hospital, where I direct some of the tobacco treatment services, as well as the evidence-based practices and research services. So it's such a pleasure to be here to speak about nursing, something near and dear to my heart, and something of which I would say I'm from a family of nursing.
Awesome, Dr. Akolio. So you and I need to talk offline about how you have that spare time. So listen, so Dr. Boston Leary, as you know, I am the president and founder of the Black Nurse Collaborative, and you were our keynote speaker during our very first State of Black Health according to the Black Nurse Summit. And in that, with all of the millions of degrees that you have behind your name, you made a very profound statement that I have used multiple times, and I did give you credit. And what you said was to the audience, I will never forget, the math ain't mathing. And she said AIN''T. And you were talking about how Black nurses in particular have a very direct impact on the health outcomes within all of our communities and how we can address health equity and health disparities. So Howard earlier mentioned about the need for more nurses, his mother being a nurse, how it impacted him in his career, how Johnson & Johnson is sponsoring all the many things to also help the nursing pipeline. Might I offer we should change it to pathways, because pipelines for me seems very cylinder and it's kind of hard to get into a pipe. It's either one way in, one way out, but there's multiple pathways into nursing. So when you said that, Dr. Leary, the math ain't mathing, talk to me about how this shortage of, in particular, Black nurses directly impacts the health outcomes for our community.
Absolutely. A great question. And it was a joy to be a part of your event, by the way. It was very, very well done for your first one. I can't wait to see what you do in 2024. But yeah, the math ain't mathin'. And let me just start with how I got into nursing. I was working at a nursing home that was very newly built near where I lived, and I was there because I had a roommate who was a cousin of mine who was looking for a job, and I gave her a ride there, and they put an application in both of our hands, and I filled it out, and I was suddenly hired on the spot, and that's how I found myself in healthcare. But I didn't have any role models like Dr. Okoli, where there are people that have been in the profession that will make me want to enter into the profession. As a matter of fact, at the nursing home, I saw that nurses were very spent and exhausted at the end of the day. So I did not see myself becoming a nurse. However, what I did was while I was working there, a gentleman that was also a nursing assistant pulled me aside and said, "Hey, Katie, the county is offering scholarships for people to go into allied health careers. So you should go to the community college and sign up," because I had taken a year off because I wanted to be an accountant like my dad. And I told him that it was not a good time. And he grabbed me by my shirt. It wouldn't happen today, but he grabbed by my scrub shirt and he said, "Don't come back here tomorrow without the information." So went home. I was really bothered by that, kind of embarrassed. And then the next day, I reluctantly, right before my shift was supposed to start at 3:00, went to the college to enroll, get the information to bring back and say, at least I went and got the information. And then I felt inspired the more I talked to people. But then I didn't want to be a nurse. I decided that I wanted to be an occupational therapist. But unfortunately, fortunately, the occupational therapist line, information session line was so long, I could not get in. And I knew I had to take something back so I didn't get embarrassed by my colleague. So I went to the shortest line, and that's how I became a nurse. Now, I have not regretted it since. It's put me in rooms that I never thought that I'd be in. And for the most part, since I've been a nurse, and I know you said 27 years, but I'm actually celebrating my 30th year in nursing, which is hard to even say. But I will say that even now and throughout my time coming up, I've always found that I was maybe, if not the only one, I was one of two or three. And even in the program that I was in, I also found that I was constantly in this place where I had to navigate these shores or these waters where I didn't feel that they wanted me to stay in the program, or there was an expectation that I would not make it through the program. And I didn't feel seen. And that's how I ended up going to an HBCU, Bowie State University, for my baccalaureate program, because that's where I felt that I would least be seen. And I did find that when I went there. So yes, the math ain't mathin', because though, a number of us can attest to this. We don't see a lot of us in our programs. Yes, if you go to certain schools, you probably do, but we have a lot of work to do. If you look at the population, we have 338 million people in the US. We only have 5 million nurses. When you look at the number of Black registered nurses that we have 308,000 Black registered nurses. How many Black people we have in the US? We have about 47 million people that are Black, identify as Black in the US. So the math doesn't line up and it doesn't add up. That's why we found that during the pandemic, we had to really do some work to build trusted messengers, because there's not a lot of trust because of all the history that exists and the history with racism in the medical and healthcare industry. So how do we upend that? How do we get people to trust and believe and see themselves and identify with who's caring for them? We have to diversify the profession, and we have not moved the dial as much as we should, given where we are as a population overall. So we have to make sure that we put in systems so that we can diversify the workforce. It should not be 2023 with nursing being 80% white. And by the way, if you think about where the nursing workforce outside of high income countries like the US and the UK, there is diversity. This diversity problem only exists in these two main continents. So why is that? We have to fix that. And you have to think about the structures that set this up, where we're still where we are. So we have we have a lot of work cut out for us to do in this space.
Wow. Thank you, Dr. Boston Larry. And as you just alluded to, the math, when you really do, it's from a scientific perspective, when you look at the number of us comparative to the number of Black persons, we absolutely have a direct impact. And as you said, and as we all saw during COVID, the messenger sometimes is more important than the message, to make sure we need people that knows us, sees us, and understands us to have that trusting relationship in healthcare. And so with that, wow, I mean, I'm still thinking about the numbers. So again, if you all did not hear what she said, make sure you go back and you check and understand what the actual numbers are of registered nurses and how that impacts all of us. So Dr. Okolio, I'm going to go to you and ask you, you're a male nurse. You're obviously, identify as Black. Help me understand. And also you're from Nigeria. So talk to me about how and why you think it's more important for Blacks, and in particular, Black males, to pursue nursing careers.
Thank you, Nidhi. And just to go on, when we look at the 2022 National Nursing Workforce Report, another way to look at the statistics is that 6.3% of nurses identify as African American or Black. But when we look at the US general population, 13.6% of individuals identify as African American or Black. So there is a clear disproportionate underrepresentation of those who identify as African American or Black within the nursing workforce. And, as a Black male African American nurse, when I went through nursing school, I was the first one, when I looked through all the series of pictures of the years, the first African American male nurse to graduate from the University of Kentucky College of Nursing. And I remember my initial beginnings in the nursing program. They had not seen one of me before, and I did not see many of me either while I was going through rotations, while I was practicing in hospitals. And I was looking for that mentor who would take me on and guide me through what it would be like, the experience of being an African American male going through nursing school. And it was pretty hard to find somebody. I did find many other mentors from different diverse backgrounds that really helped me, shape me into the nurse that I am. But if I had had somebody who had a similar cultural orientation, who knew me, saw me, understood what I was going through, I think some things would have been easier in my journey in nursing. So I think it's really important for us to recognize we need more African American Black nurses within the nursing profession. And as Mr. Howard had explained earlier, when we do have communities that have healthcare professionals that look like us, our patients and our communities are more likely to engage in their care. They're more likely to seek care. They're more likely to have better healthcare outcomes. These are important things to nursing. And so when we are visible within the space and people can trust us because we have similar backgrounds and we understand them, then there is something that we have to offer not just to our patients, but also to nursing as a profession. And one example is, from my background, my cultural identity, I'm deeply spiritual. And certainly I have been trained how to take care of the psychological needs of people, the physical healthcare needs. But it's not uncommon in my practice when I'm with certain individuals who are open to it to offer a prayer. I can take care of their spiritual care because that's something unique to my heritage and my culture. In the same way, we have a lot to offer as African American and Black nurses. We have our unique identities that we can bring into the nursing profession and inform the profession, but also give the profession something unique that we alone have. So in that way, I really feel it's important for more of us to be present, to be available, and to be the leaders that we are within the nursing profession.
Thank you for sharing that perspective, Dr. Okolio, because oftentimes we forget that it's the mind, body, and spirit. And so we do know that we have to appreciate and acknowledge people's different cultural and spiritual backgrounds. So having that vulnerable space and sharing that is also so important. So, fun fact, you all, I met Dr. Williams outside of a hotel in Washington, D.C., and we had about an hour conversation on a bench. And so she is a person who really poured into me and sharing her experiences, migrating here from Jamaica, coming here in the US and doing amazing things. And now she is a chief nurse officer at arguably one of the most notable organizations at Yale Hospital. And so, Dr. Williams, with that, I never forget that you talked to me about your journey in nursing. And so the question that I have for you, I heard in an interview that you recently did at Yale New Haven Hospital, and you were talking about a lot of nurses are second career professionals. And so talk to me about what your thoughts are on how second degree nurses impact our profession, and what, in your opinion, are the advantages of having those second degree nurses that might be more mature in their professional outlook and even maybe sometimes their age. Let me know what are your thoughts about that, even in your own personal journey into nursing.
Well, thank you, Midi. And what she didn't tell you was that she chased me down and I couldn't quite get away from her. So I really had to figure out how to meet with her. And I'm so glad we were able to squeeze in the time to be able to meet with her when I was in DC on another separate business. I became a nurse because my mom had a picture of her sister on the dresser in her room. And there was just something about this woman standing in this uniform, in this really, I think it was crisp looking. It just looked really interesting to me. But what I saw in that picture, I was able to see in my community. So I'm from a family of 11. I'm the second of 11. So the nurse midwife came to our house quite a few times. And so I saw that nurse and how she was able to care for women in our community. And at first I didn't quite understand why she came to our house as often as she did, but I figured that out eventually. The second inspiration for me was the public health nurse. She was about 5 feet tall, but let me tell you, when she walked down the street, it felt like the waters parted. And so there was something about these two women that were not teachers and they were not, working in the post office, that sort of appealed to me. But the greater appeal was the impact they had on the community. Watching the patients in the clinic just wait for this nurse to come so she could care for them, because we rarely had doctors who came to the clinic. They came so rarely. And so they really led the care for the community. And I just wanted to be one of them. And so those were the things that inspired me to become a nurse. And I am so glad I made that decision. It has been such a wonderful, wonderful journey for me. To address your question, the other thing that I just want to give a shout out is that I like to spend a lot of my time, of course, working in the profession, but I also, like Katie, I'm a real believer in the professional organizations. And Midi, you are a founder. Katie, you work with the American Nurses Association, and I have had a chance to work with the National Black Nurses Association, and most recently was elected president-elect for the American Organization of Nurse Leaders. So wanted to point out that those are all the things that sort of part of my journey in nursing. So the question about second career nurses, we see a lot of them in our organizations, and many of our employees actually go on to become nurses. What they bring to the field, and I just love to talk to them, because they bring a sense of been there, done. They've done it before, so they've worked before, and they made the decision that they want to be a different nurse. I have one of the nurses who was a theater, he was an actor, but he brought this amazing self to the nursing profession, and really helped us when we were doing projects to help us to think creatively. We have nurses who were in the world of business. We have nurses who were researchers. We have nurses who were artists, and have come from such a variety, and they bring this sense of maturity, but really a sense of sort of knowing that they have figured out now that this is the thing that they want to do. And so we're really just grateful for them. They help us to see things in the environment, and really, Mehdi, as you said, from a mature perspective, sometimes ask us the questions that we forgot or stopped asking ourselves because we've gotten so used to that. To answer your second question, and I think their second question is sort of, what are the different ways that you can become a nurse? And I just think that there's so much more opportunities now than there were when I was a new nurse. You can become a nurse by going from high school right into nursing schools, and some nursing programs have you may have to first do your liberal studies, and then you apply to the nursing program. And then you have schools where you enter right into the nursing program at the beginning of your journey. And those can be associate degree programs and bachelor's degree programs. And so you have that option. I think there are probably less and less associate degree programs. Most of them are found in the community college, but they serve a really important purpose because not everyone can go to the 4-year college. For example, we have multiple individuals, I would say an average of 30 individuals who are nurses aide in our hospital who go to nursing school. Many of them are mothers, they're single moms, or they're dads, and they're caring for families because they're more adult, they're much more mature when they've decided to go back to school. And so this offers an opportunity for them to do what we call the 2+2 program. So we've worked with a number of our schools in the area where they can transfer in and not have to repeat any courses. So this is their first 2 years and then their second year. You can also accelerate into a program where you can have a previous degree in art, psychology, theater, and you can accelerate sometimes as quickly as 18 months to become a nurse. And so there are multiple and many schools, and most of those schools offer you another bachelor's degree than the one that you have before. There are some schools that will actually accelerate you into a master's program, into a nurse practitioner program. We have a number of them in our environment where we work closely with those schools. They become part of our organization when they become nurses, and then they go on to their advanced practice nurses. And then you have some nurses who, really need to sort of take that slower step because for a variety of reasons, whether it's economic reason, whether it's where they are in their life cycle, they may want to become a certified nurse's aide. Some people do that. You get into a job where you can sometimes get some financial aid and tuition reimbursement, and you can go on to then become a registered nurse. Or some people begin at the LPN level, and then there are bridge programs in a number of schools where you can bridge from the LPN to the registered nurse. The bottom line is there are so many more pathways now for individuals to become nurses. And but you got to do your homework. You got to have those STEM grades. It is not because there are not available spots. Is that it's a very competitive environment, and so you really need to make sure that you're doing your best to be as competitive as possible to get into the program. And then I just want to give a shout out to Johnson & Johnson, who just published an ebook around helping individuals to understand what nursing is all about. Lots of role models, lots of examples, but also create lots of pathways and provide lots of information about how you can prepare yourself to become a nurse. So I will stop there for now until we get to the next question. Hope that answers your question.
It does, Dr. Williams. And to your point, people need to understand that there are so many pathways, which is why I've been told to not use that word pipeline. It is a pathway. There's many entry points when you're on a path. And so thank you for sharing that. And, for those that are watching, if you're a CNA, if you're a certified nursing assistant or a patient care tech, or a licensed practitioner, nurse, we need you. And there's multiple opportunities for funding to help you with your career. So we're excited for you to share all those other opportunities, Dr. Williams. So Dr. Boston Leary, listen, you talked about the math. You talked about that there's not enough nurses to really care for, in particular, the Black and brown individuals in our country. The question that I have for you is, how do you see nursing evolving? Even myself, all three of you, all four of us rather, understand that particularly in acute care settings, whether you're in academia like Dr. Okolio, whether you're in acute care practice like myself and Dr. Williams, or you, Dr. Boston Leary, creating and developing policies and procedures for our entire profession, it's not just about the bedside, it's care beyond the bedside. So how do you see nursing evolving in the world of technology and AI and home visit? And we all saw what happened during COVID, Dr. Boston Leary, where a lot of our visits were virtual. What are your thoughts about the evolution of nursing and our next steps?
Yeah, well, if you find yourself in the profession and you come out on the other side as a nurse, the world is your oyster. This is for 21, going on 22 years in a row, the most trusted profession. People are looking for professionals that they can trust. And so nurses are now in high demand in a number of different places. And gone are the days where you would finish nursing school and the path for you typically has to start or run through the acute care setting or the hospital setting, and in some cases you stay there. We're seeing now that because of the power shift that's happening in nursing, with a lot of what's occurring with the staffing crisis, well-being being a top of mind issue for everyone, for nurses and healthcare providers overall, nurses that are actually voting with their feet. They're going where they feel they're going to be valued, where they'll be respected, and where they can have autonomy and flexibility with their schedule. Because of that, you're seeing nurses in a number of different places. And I was tracking nurses that are actually making inroads in the trucking industry, like truck driving industry, where they're actually building dispatch centers using the skills that they garnered from building EHRs, right? And doing those types of implementations. So, and also, I'll share this too. We're actually tracking work where the American Dental Association is working on building a program for nurses to become dental hygienists and using their nursing skills to assess patients, because patients that are showing up in dental offices have a lot of other medical issues that have to be dealt with, and they feel that we always have a holistic approach to care. So why not create a module for nurses to enter in? So now, and that's a good thing, but then it's a not so good thing, because we already have our gaps, particularly where care is most acute, and where patients have more needs in terms of complexities and everything in the acute care setting. So it's pulling talent away from that space. But what I say to everyone, because there's this major argument about whether we have a shortage or we just have nurses that refuse to work in the environments that are not conducive to them, that are not necessarily healthy. We have to do what we can to flood the market to build more nurses, period. And really accept that nurses end up in a number of different spaces, and it's okay. And we need to welcome, I think, to Ina's point earlier, and the point that you made earlier, Meaty, a lot of nurses have multiple talents. They're multi-layered. They don't just come in and gone. I think we should do away with the thinking that, if you're a nurse, that's your only skill set. They come in with a number of other skill sets and interests that we need to nourish when they come into our environments, so that that helps them feel valued. I always hang my hat on the title, on the concept of mattering. And mattering is really about knowing that you're adding value and feeling valued. And we can make nurses feel valued by recognizing all the talents that they have. And that's why I love Ina's example of the person that had experience in theater and leveraging that for change management in her organization. We have to understand all the different layers that nurses have, bring those to the forefront, and utilize those skills, and also pay them appropriately while you're at it. So I do think that there's so much that we need to understand in terms of where nurses could be, and I think the landscape is vast where nurses can find themselves because they have unique skills and talents that everybody wants. But what we also need to recognize is that with the shift that's occurring, what can we do, to your point, in building more pathways into nursing, and also opening up things that we've closed because we want to make it exclusive to certain folks. For example, we can have people at the master's level teaching in our colleges and schools of nursing and not make it exclusive to certain folks. And by the way, while we're talking about diversifying nurses that are providing care, we have to diversify our faculty too. As much as we're concerned about the numbers when it comes to nurses that are actually providing care, it's even worse when you go into our healthcare institutions. And as a matter of fact, that was one of the reasons, because of the lack of diversity, that's actually one of the reasons why I actually almost did not make it into a specialty that I love that Ina just shared that she was in, which is the OR. I wanted to go into the OR so badly. And I went to an instructor for her to sign my externship papers so I can enter into this externship, and she refused to sign it. She said she didn't see me doing that. And when I asked why, what did she mean by that? She said, well, it's just not for you. But what she was trying to do is enter into some level of gatekeeping where she felt that probably as a Black nurse, or some of the misconceptions around Black brains, she didn't feel that I had the aptitude to function in that space. But not only did I end up going there eventually, I actually conquered it. I became a manager, director, and senior director, and then I became a CNO. So we have to really look at some of the structures that are also preventing the diversity that we need and open up different pathways for people to come into nursing. We need to be welcoming to LPNs as well. We have a lot of diversity there, not just with race, but socioeconomic status, and really make sure that we understand and everyone understand that this is a welcoming profession. We need all hands on deck. We want everyone that has an interest in this, and we need to love on them and help them feel like they belong, because we've done enough to say that this is not for you or this is for that person. We have issues also with the more specialized we are in nursing, the less diverse it is. You have ICUs that probably only have 1 or 2 Black nurses. Why is that in 2023? Or even in the OR, and I think the OR has made a lot of strides in terms of diversity, but let's look at what we're doing, where we're putting things in place that prevents people from seeing themselves from entering in or doing things to weed them out. So those are all the things that we need to do to make sure that we understand that we have our work cut out for us, because we really have to make sure that we open up every single path that needs to be for people to enter in the profession. I also say this. We know that in certain sports, right, where it's high income sports or high expenses, where there's not a lot of diversity, like swimming, where there's actually a cultural aspect to that, where we feel that we can't swim. Lacrosse, a great example, Meaty, or even tennis, golf. And those associations have created academies and pathways in certain communities to get people into those types of sports. We need to do the same thing in nursing. I think that's the way to open it up. And the way to do that, and I was just on the Hill yesterday with Dr. Martha Dawson, who is the immediate past president of the National Black Nurses Association, where she really talked about, we focus a lot on loan forgiveness, but what about on the front end with Black people that can't get school loans? And how do we set things up on the front end, not just for nurses of color to be able to enter the profession if they can't get a loan, but get a grant in some way like I did, but also look at how we can support them financially, because you can't go to nursing school and hold down a job. But the reason that's a barrier as well is because most people of color that try to enter into the profession are heads of their own households. So how could they not work? And that's where you get people sneaking around, trying to work behind the scenes, or either they're working night shift and then they show up the next day and they're sleepy, and then they're all of a sudden labeled as not being engaged and they're weeded out of the program. So we have to look at all those different aspects that keep people out, open up the doors to get people in. That's how we get to the diversity that we need in the profession. That's how we start to get to a place where we have people at the bedside that mirrors the people that we care for.
Thank you so much, Dr. Boston Larry. And yes, I put that in the chat for those who don't know, because you are 100% correct. My son's a lacrosse player, and just one particular tournament that we were considering, just one, was going to cost us about $4,000 for 3 days of play. And so you hit on so many different key components. I myself, for the audience, I'm a cardiac ICU nurse, and I was one of just 3 nurses out of a staff of over 40 that was able to be in what was considered the creme de la creme of my organization. You also spoke, Dr. Boston Larry, about in academia. So I'm going to go to Dr. Okolio, because Dr. Okolio, I also recently, well, I'm currently also the chair of the DC Board of Nursing in Washington, DC. And I have the opportunity for 4 years to sit on the National Council State Boards of Nursing's NCLEX Item Review Committee. And it was so important as I sat there and in my 4-year tenure, reading over 3,000 plus NCLEX questions. And for those in the audience, that is a national exam that nurses have to take to get that RN behind their name. Dr. Okolio, it was amazing because of every single, and I'm not exaggerating, friends, every single picture that I saw was not of any Black hue. And every single opportunity when it spoke about minority nursing, I always had to raise my hand about how was this question worded and how would it be perceived from my white colleagues, because it's always assuming that white was right in that context, or that our other Caucasian brothers and sisters kind of had a better preference as a superior race. So the question that I have for you this evening, Dr. Okolio, as you shared, one, being an academic professor, working at the University of Kentucky, 2, being a Black nurse, but 3, also being a male nurse. Talk to us 3 ladies tonight and to the audience. How has a career in nursing specifically impacted your life? Not just personally with you coming from a family of nurses. And you shared with us moments ago before Dr. Boston Larry about how you were the only person in your class. Why are we still having the only in 1990s or even the 1980s, if I will? So I know we don't have much time left, but in that brief moment, can you share what that was like and how has nursing impacted your career to where you are now, sir? Loaded question, no pressure.
I won't take the pressure, but I'll take the gratitude and the appreciation. And I think that's what I'm going to speak to about nursing. I'm a psychiatric mental health nurse, and right out of nursing school, I remember going through the different rotations. You go through the surgical rotation, the med surg rotations, mother, baby, and so on. And I just couldn't find my place. But the place where I mattered, so I appreciate your using that term, Dr. Boston Larry, was when I walked into a psych unit. I saw a naked man running, and I saw 3 nurses chasing him. And for some reason, I felt, now I'm home. And what I learned from that experience, and then subsequently working within this most vulnerable population, people living with mental and behavioral health challenges, is to be grateful. So I'm going to answer your question in 2 ways. First of all, personally, nursing as a career has challenged me to become an authentic person. We face racism. We face stigmatization. There are so many things that I have experienced in my nursing career that has challenged me to think about what kind of person will I be in a world that has so many challenges? What kind of person will I be in changing the world that I live in, to see the world that I want to live in? And so we work with people who experience all kinds of pain and suffering, psychological, physical. But caring for people has made me appreciate life so much more. It's made me a very grateful person. And it's made me have a deeper appreciation for all kinds of people. Knowing especially that I matter as a nurse because I am part of the solution to so many healthcare problems. Professionally, as Dr. Williams and Dr. Boston-Leary have said, nursing is this incredible profession where you have so many options and many opportunities. You know, I'm a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. I see my patients through telehealth. I'm leveraging technology, but I also teach at the university, but I also do research, and I have the opportunity to present a lot of my research globally in so many different places to see how nurses are and the professional identity of nurses in different countries. Not only that, inspiring people to become nurses and also to show how nursing as a profession matters to the world. So I feel doubly blessed personally and professionally to be a nurse. It's an amazing career. It has so many incredible opportunities. And I really hope that our listeners and viewers will feel inspired to jump right in and join us in this wonderful profession. There is a place for each one of you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Okolio. And you know, one thing that I've learned as I'm journeying in my own nursing career, and all four of us working very diligently in our own respective ways, I think it should be called DEEB. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Because to your point earlier, Dr. Boston-Leary, you can have all the diversity in the world. It can have all the equity that you want. You can have all the inclusion. But if I don't feel that I belong in that environment, the DE&I is always going to be very challenging. So listen, to all of our listeners, we don't have much time left. We can have this conversation, I'm sure, with the three of these amazing panelists for probably 2 more hours and then some. We can probably have a whole class. Dr. Williams, really quick, in about a minute or so, tell the audience what would you share, rather, to an aspiring nurse from long-term care development? You were at your organization, you started from the bottom, and now you are truly at the top. Talk to us very, very briefly about what advice would you give them seeking a long-term career in nursing?
Well, I'm going to start out by focusing on the word long. So it is a long career. And so things will not happen, in the first year or the second year. Secondly, there are multiple practice environments for you to practice in. I never thought I would be an OR nurse. In fact, I never wanted to be an OR nurse. And so the opportunity will come in multiple ways. So I always tell folks when they ask for advice, stay wide open. Don't close the door on an opportunity that might be presented to you, because what I have found that those are all seem to be the best ones, and they always seem to turn out fairly well. So stay open, do the work, prepare yourself, know what is required of you in terms of your growth. And so while you're growing in your experience, also grow in your academics, and make sure that you're marching along in parallel with those two things. But know that there is a wide open field, and that there's so many things that you can do, and never leave the profession of nursing.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. I so appreciate that. So listen, we do want to take a few questions from the audience, but before we do that really quick, I want to bring back Mr. Howard Reed. His work is so important to why we are here this evening. We're so grateful for him and Johnson & Johnson sponsoring this. So Mr. Reed, give us a few closing thoughts on what you think about these, and I'm going to add myself, these 4 amazing nurse leaders that are here this evening, as you are the global head and senior vice president of Global Health Equity, and all 4 of us really appreciate the work that you do, how you can impact, and Johnson & Johnson has impacted all of our areas and spaces of nursing. If you're a nurse or aspiring nurse, there's many ads we see of Johnson & Johnson supporting nursing. So Mr. Reed, we want to give you just a few moments to give us your feedback and your thoughts on the conversation this evening.
Yeah, first, I want to thank you, Meady. This has been an amazing conversation. I also want to thank BDO for hosting this event. And as you mentioned, I want to extend my sincere thanks to the panelists for sharing their experiences, insight, and passion for nursing. For me, this has been amazing. I was inspired by this conversation, and I hope we've succeeded in sparking interest in nursing as a career for everybody in the audience this evening. And for those of you that want to consider becoming a nurse, I really do encourage you to visit the website nursing.jnj.com. We have some amazing resources to learn even more about this amazing profession. But I thought this was outstanding. Thank you for having us.
No, we thank you so much, Mr. Reed. And again, that website for those that are out there, it's on the banner, nursing.jnj.com. So listen, quick rapid fire, Dr. Williams, Dr. Boston Leary, and Dr. Ocolio. Okay, so that's like 30 seconds. Okay, so we have just about 4 or 5 minutes left on this discussion tonight. And I'm actually going to start with you, Mr. Reed, since you're here. Tell me if you had one inspirational word that you would give out there for why to be a nurse. Why should somebody take a career in nursing from an executive perspective at J&J? 30 seconds.
I don't need 30 seconds. I'll give you one word, and it's impact. Impact on communities that we serve, impact in communities that we live in.
I appreciate that. Dr. Williams, I'm going to go to you. Why nursing?
You can. Well, I'm going to use our word. The impact you can have on the profession, on the world, on the community, and in the lives of individuals. You can really transform and change lives.
Awesome. I love that. Dr. Ocolio, how about you, sir?
I'll go with the word caring. Nursing is a caring profession, and we become nurses for many, many reasons, but ultimately because we do care. We care about people, we care about ourselves, and we care about our communities.
Dr. Boston Leary, what about you?
I think all of the answers are really great, but I'll say this hard part. I'll go about going last, but I'll say game changers. As nurses, you just change the game in so many different ways. You impact the world, and not just with delivering care at the bedside, but in every aspect of life. So you're not only changing the game for you and your family and the legacy that you may build, but the lives of so many other people that you wouldn't even remember, but they remember you. So I think it's that game changing aspect that I would like to add into the conversation.
Awesome. So another rapid fire question. I'm going to you, Dr. Ocolio, 30 seconds because of what you do, sir, as an active professor. I'm interested in nursing, Dr. Ocolio. What's the best way for me to get started? That's one of the questions we received from our audience.
Get informed. Go to websites of different universities or colleges. Find out which path is best for you. And then find a nurse who can be a mentor or just a nurse and interview them. Find out why they got into nursing and what it means to them.
Great. And I love that you're sticking to that 30 seconds. Dr. Boston Leary, I'm going to go to you on this question really quick. There's many different pathways into nursing and all the work that you do. So I am proficient in math and science. Do I have to be in high school or college to pursue a nursing and career? What says the ANA? What says you, Dr. Boston Leary?
Well, you have to start with that secondary education for sure. And then there are prerequisites that you have to take. But there are a number of different ways. You do have people that start as certified nursing assistants and they work their way towards becoming a nurse or LPNs. But I went directly into an RN program. And this is the other thing I want to just add about that. There are people in our community that will say, don't go right into an RN position, RN program, start with a CNA. I say you don't have to. As long as you have the means and you do your research and that's what you want to do, just go for it. And make sure you're surrounded by people that love you and a great support system that helps you get on the other side, because you're going to need all of that to survive a nursing program.
I appreciate that. Last 30 seconds, Dr. Williams, this is the hot topic everybody wants to know, even my team. How much money on average do nurses make? So as a CNO, Dr. Williams, what's the average that you think, we don't have to talk about your hospital specifically, but what on average do nurses make?
Well, it depends on how much the nurse wants to work, but so you can begin again from the lowest spectrum, $65,000 a year, to over $100,000 a year, and it depends on the role that you're in. If you're an entry-level nurse, you're probably in the 60,000-70,000 range. If you are a manager, a leader, you're maybe a little bit higher. And as you go up in the ranks, you have opportunities to make. If you're a nurse practitioner, a faculty member, there's a variety of ways to earn money. So
Thank you so much, Dr. Williams. So to all of our guests and listeners, I just want to say thank you so much. It was an honor to be here this evening. Again, Mr. Reed, we thank you and Johnson & Johnson and partnering with blackdoctor.org. Yes, Black doctor, but you can't have Black doctors without Black nurses. So we are excited to have this great opportunity to share tonight. Thank you all for being here. And to our guests, again, if you are interested, please go to nursing.jnj.com. Why be a nurse to learn more about this phenomenal conversation. Again, there's multiple pathways into the nursing field. Thank you so very much for joining. To all of the panelists, thank you for sharing your brilliance. We look forward to hopefully having a subsequent conversation in the future. And we encourage everyone to educate yourself about careers in nursing, because I promise you it will not disappoint. Get yourself a mentor. Get yourself a sponsor, such as my personal persons, Dr. Williams and Dr. Boston Leary, has taught me, and you won't go wrong. Have a great evening, and thank you for being here this evening with Black